first half against the Knights in Newcastle yesterday. Perhaps the toughest to watch this season for fans, considering the bulk of their best players in that starting 17 as we drop down the ladder after 24 rounds. They sit there in 20 competition points, and the negative 297 pretty much sums it up. Gus, for you yesterday, watching what unfolded at McDonald Jones Stadium, what did it say to you at the Bulldogs?
There was a lot of frustration in the first half, but that's about where we are as a team at the moment. Struggled all year. A couple of players were coming back from injury and haven't had a lot of football this year. Not making excuses, we had a couple of blokes down with flu during the week, and Matt Burton didn't train all week. He delivered a baby at midnight Saturday night the night before and only joined the team on the day of the game. So having said that, they broke down in so many discipline areas that it just wasn't good enough. And there have been performances like this throughout the year. There have been some good ones. They've won 7 games. But for the majority of the time, they just haven't been good enough, and our roster is not competitive enough at the moment to be beating the top sides, and particularly big days like this for Newcastle. They had a full house and they're on their way to the finals, and we just couldn't contain them. But it gives us another indication again of where we're going.
Guys, I remember speaking to you in the pre-season about and how optimistic and how impressed you were with the program that Cameron Ciraldo had run, and there was a lot of hype around Belmore, as there would be with the new coach coming in, and a few signings as well. Has it been the year that you thought it would be performance-wise? I know you're 7 wins, which what you had last year, but did you think they would perform better than what they have?
I've said a number of times, this year we were always vulnerable a little bit with the roster because we'd actually moved some people. We were trying to fix some salary cap issues to give us more money to spend in the coming years. And that's left us a little bit vulnerable with depth-wise. And, of course, we had a horrific run with injury in the early part of the season. Their pre-season was great. The coaches have done a wonderful job, and the players have worked really hard too. I think where the coaches have come from, they've trained them like they should be a good team, and some players have improved and some players haven't. Some players have gone backwards and some just haven't handled it at all. We have used an inordinate number of players, 30-odd players we've used this year, I think more than any other club. I think we've debuted 9 or 10 more than any other club. Combinations have been hard to come by, but it's just proof again of how much work the club's got to do before it gets competitive, with the top sides. The sides we've beaten have all been around us at the bottom of the ladder. We did have a win over Melbourne earlier in the year in Melbourne. They were a little bit under strength, and we had a win over the Cowboys earlier in the year when they probably weren't travelling as well as they are now. Other than that, we've sort of been competitive with the bottom 5 or 6 teams, and then other sides have really put them to the sword. So we've got a long way to go yet.
Guys, having spoken to Cameron Ciraldo the last couple of weeks, the one thing he says about the recruitment plan going forward, if you look at the guys that you're bringing in, Liam Knight, Blake Taff, Jamin Salmon, Takiaho, all these guys have come from winning cultures. Is that more important to the Bulldogs now than players, than the actual talent of the players? Is it the kind of people you bring into the club, given the predicament you find yourselves in?
It's really hard at the moment because the player market is, I've never seen the player market, the ability to buy players and attract players as difficult as what it is at the moment. Now, whether or not that's because, there's a couple of theories. We had the COVID years where there was no junior development football, so we haven't got as many young kids emerging as first graders at the age of 19, 20, 21 that we would normally have at our disposal. There was no really development process or plan at the Bulldogs, prior to 12 months ago. And we had the advent of the 17th team. And we've had a new broadcast rights deal. And there's also the speculation there'll be an 18th team. So everyone else has reacted. They've signed up their players for longer. There's bigger money coming into the game, so players have been willing to sign up for longer. There's not as many marquee players coming off contract, which is why Tino, because he had an out clause, was able to attract that sort of money, because right at the moment, supply just doesn't equal demand. I think a lot of the clubs, particularly in our position, are struggling to attract players that they think can actually change your fortunes. So for us, it's a long-term approach. We're going to develop our own, and we've started at the very lowest base, and we've been out there actively recruiting teenagers and trying to develop teenagers, and that's a long-term process. In the meantime, what we want is living, breathing examples of people that have been at successful clubs and in successful environments. We've brought a couple from Penrith, brought a couple from South Sydney, and the top sides are going to have to shed players. That just happens. The Panthers, because they've been winning comps, they've had to lose a couple of players that they didn't want to lose. I didn't want to see them lose those players, but it's been handy for us to pick them up in Kickow and Crichton and Burton and those sort of fellas. And hopefully there'll be a few more from other teams available as well. But in the meantime, we need to attract tradesmen, professionals, people that can improve the culture and the professionalism of the club and the preparation, and to give our younger players coming through the system living, breathing examples of what it means to be a professional footballer. At the moment, we are way off the pace in that regard. They try hard. They're a good bunch of blokes. They all get on really well. The coaches have run a great program, but we're not good enough at the moment.
Gus, you bought Toby Sexton, you got Kyle Fleming at the club and young Olawapu. Is there any chance Burton may move back to the centre? I know you're not the coach, but in your opinion, has Burton done the job at 5'8"? Is there any chance of him going back to the centres? If not this year, maybe next year?
I wouldn't think so, and I'm not the coach, but we really didn't have a regular fullback this year, and we were looking for a halfback. We didn't get Toby Sexton into the system until, only 3 weeks ago. We got him in there. So we want to see Burton, if we can get a fullback, and that's what Crichton's been brought to do, if we can get a little bit more forward power in front of him, if we can get him a halfback that can actually direct us around the field. And until this weekend, he and Toby Sexton were actually going quite well. Berto didn't train this week. His partner was having a baby, and she didn't have it until after midnight on Saturday night, and he went up and joined the team so they really had a disrupted preparation that way. No excuse, but I think they'll still give Burton the opportunity to nail down that position if he can, but we also know he can play other positions.
Gus, I know you hate talking speculative stuff around player movement, but a lot of Canterbury fans are holding out hope that there's someone that the club can land, a big fish. And
who?
Well, they're talking, obviously 24, there's no one around for next year, but there's a lot of talk around whether or not the club will be in a position to go harder to Payne Haas if he doesn't stay in Brisbane, or a Jerome Luai. How much do those guys get brought up in conversations internally? And if they don't stay at their clubs, are the Bulldogs going to be going hard for them?
Well, they don't come off contract for 18 months. And even if we were interested in buying one of those players, we can't talk to them until November anyway. So that's all speculation.
It's not far away.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I expect both those players to be signed up with their clubs by November 1. So I'm not knocking myself out worrying about whether or not they're going to be available or what have you. If they become available, if they put themselves on the market, naturally we would look at it, but is that sort of money on those sort of players going to solve our issues? Is that, is it one player that's going to turn our club around? Right at the moment, I don't know that will. But these are things that we'll work out down the track. We've got to give our kids a chance. And it's hard to talk about right at the moment too, because I've still got players coming off contract that are still in there fighting, looking for another deal. They're off contract and they're trying to get through to the end of the season. They've got 3 more rounds to impress. We're trying to encourage them to keep sticking at it and play through till the end of the season. It's not easy for them. It's not easy for these kids in this market at the moment. And the way that this CBA has been set up, the way that the second tier cap is, there's going to be a lot of kids running around not having work next year or not being able to be paid accordingly to train the hours that they need to train to be competitive. It's a real problem, a real worry for the future of the game. That's part of the CBA that just has been neglected, I think, and I'm pretty dirty on that. But anyway, that's...
Is it a harder job than you had at Penrith, Gus? Is it a bigger job than you'd had there? Because I remember you saying that you were coming from the ground up at Penrith. Is this even harder?
I was always confident at Penrith. This one is, I'd say it's probably the most difficult task I could imagine right at the moment. But having said that, it's a great club. It's a big club. We know it well. There is a huge groundswell of support out there if we can get it right. And I know we will in time. Putting a time frame on that is impossible at the moment. And as I say, I've never seen the player market the way it is right at the moment. And you look at the lopsided nature of our competition. We had 8 games on the weekend where the favourites all won and there were some big score lines in it, and the bottom teams are really struggling. And for teams that are in our position, it's hard to get out of the cellar, let alone be competitive with those top sides the way they're going at the moment. We're a long way off the pace.
Could you beat the Raiders on Sunday though in Canberra?
Well, we're taking a team down there. We'll give it our best shot. We're a little bit unpredictable at times. You just don't know what's going to come out. But it's I would like this season over, though. I would like to get on with the rest of the season.
In summary, 3 weeks and counting.
Yeah.
I like it. Good on you, Gus, the top dog there, speaking all things Bulldog.